Alright, to begin writing our task for get method, I'm still in this split view, and on the left I have the task for get method that we're going to implement in the TMDB client, and on the right we're looking at the get session ID method in the login view controller. And if you don't know how to use the split view, you just need to select the assistant editor here, and then you can select which files you want using these file navigators here at the top for the left and right views. Now, what we want to do is pull the common code elements out of get session ID from here on the right into the task for get method on the left. Now, as we stated earlier, each method may have different parameters, but they all take the API key. So as our first step for task for get method, we can ensure that the API is included in our request by adding it to our parameters dictionary that's passed into the function. And remember, this can change because the dictionary itself can change because we've declared it as a variable parameter. Next, we need to build the URL in the request object. So I've copied over the 2 and 3 steps here from get session ID, but they need to be tweaked slightly so that we can construct a URL depending on the method that we're using. And remember, we pass in the method string as the first parameter for task for get method. So for the with path extension argument, let's just change this to method. Now let's create the request and start defining the completion handler for the data task with request method. In get session ID, the first thing that we do is define the display error function, but we don't need that here in task for get method. Instead, we'll let whoever calls task for get method handle any errors that we pass back using that completion handler for get. Remember how when we looked at task for get image, I think it was, in login view controller, that we could respond to the image data that was being passed back or the error that was being passed back? That's where we're going to let people respond to the errors, is using this completion handler. So we're not going to add that here. Instead, the first thing that we're going to do is make these guard checks. So let's copy the guard statements that we've been using all along, and let's move them over here. And instead of calling display error, we can use the completion handler for get to send the error back. So I'll define a method called sendError. It's going to be similar to our display error. And it's going to construct a NSError like we need, and then our result that's going to pass back is nil. And then we can just simply replace display error with sendError, sendError, and sendError. There we go. Now we're ready to turn our JSON data into a usable dictionary after we've made these guard checks. Now we can do that by copying this code over, or we can use a method that's already defined in the TMDB client. And that method is called convert data with completion handler. So if we pass it our data, and then it also takes a completion handler, and this completion handler, its signature, it matches the signature of our task handler, or I'm sorry, completion handler for get. So let's do that, and then let's go down to see what this, or scroll, we could scroll down or we can click to see what this method actually looks like. Now this method takes our data, and then it takes a completion handler, a closure, matching the closure type that we saw for, what is it, completion handler for get. So let's go back down here. And what this is going to allow this method to do is to handle the converting of our data into a usable dictionary, and because it takes our completion handler, it can call it. So if this conversion into a usable dictionary fails, then it can call our completion handler, and it'll pass nil for the results and pass the NSError, or an error with convert data with completion handler. Otherwise, it'll call it and pass our results back, our usable dictionary, and an error of nil. And this will bubble back up to where it's being called here, which in turn, you can think of it as bubbling back up to wherever the completion handler for get is defined. So in our view controller, it will bubble back up with either the result, the resulting data, or our error. And the last thing we need to do is make sure that we start the task, which we already have that there. And that's it. We now have a reusable method that will make a GET request and return some data, or an error, from the movie database. So next, we're going to do the same thing for task for post method.